Howdy everyone, this is your buddy BP, and I'm here today to review the Year 2 version of Dragon's Breath. Dragon's Breath is a solar damage exotic rocket launcher first introduced in Destiny in the Dark Below expansion pack. For Year 1, Dragon's Breath went unused. This exotic perk wasn't very helpful, and as a solar damage exotic rocket launcher, it was having to compete against Yallarhorn. And against Yallarhorn, nothing wins. Well, it is Year 2, and they have completely redesigned Dragon's Breath from the ground up. And without a Yallarhorn around in Year 2, it doesn't have much to compete against. But is it still enough to dust it off and take it out the vault? Let's take a closer look at the Dragon's Breath. The Dragon's Breath base stats aren't very impressive. The blast radius is small, the velocity is painfully low, and it can only hold one rocket in the magazine. Worst of this, in my opinion, is the blast radius, which is really small for a rocket launcher. You won't notice this so much in PvE, but in PvP it was noticeable. Sometimes the napalm canister would drop right next to an enemy and it would only do 194 damage to them, which is really low. Normally for a rocket launcher it should be an instant kill. This was normally mitigated by the damage over time dealt by the weapon, but it was still disappointing. The Dragon's Breath exotic ability is Napalm. Release the trigger after weapon fire to drop a solar damage napalm canister. The way this works is that instead of tapping the trigger, you hold it down, and when the rocket is near an enemy, you release it, and the rocket turns into this sort of thermite grenade that, when it hits the ground, it explodes and leaves a huge blanket of fire that deals damage to enemies over time that are inside of it. This is a huge improvement over last year's exotic ability, which only left a solar flare grenade in its wake. The grenade didn't last very long, and it didn't cover a very wide area. The Napalm ability fixes both of these problems while looking cool at the same time. This ability is really good against Tier 1 enemies that are clustered together. It can also be used to help soften up Tier 2 enemies with strong shields. Do note, however, that the napalm canister can be a little unpredictable in how it bounces. Sometimes it will bounce off an enemy, or it'll ricochet off a wall in a strange way, so there's a little bit of a learning curve in figuring out how this weapon works. A good tip is to aim this weapon at the wall behind an enemy so that the canister will ricochet off and land closer to the enemy's feet. Alternatively, you can just tap the trigger and the rocket will keep going until it hits a surface, and then it will deploy the canister automatically. But for more accurate hits, learning how to deploy the canister using this ability is crucial. The Dragon's Breath first set of optional perks include Smart Drift Control, Linear Compensator, and Confined Launch. My choice for this weapon would be Linear Compensator. The weapon's velocity is already horribly low as it is, and you really don't have to worry about stability too much, seeing as how you can only fire one rocket before having to reload. Dragon's Breath's next ability is Surplus, which allows you to find more ammo for this weapon. This basically translates to you getting more ammo per ammo brick that you find for heavy weapons. Normally for a rocket launcher you would only get 1 or 2, but for Dragon's Breath you're guaranteed 3 every time you pick up a purple brick. If you're playing as your Titan, definitely combo this with your Ruin Wings. It will increase the frequency of heavy ammo drops and will allow you to get at least 5 rockets per brick, and sometimes more. The next set of optional perks includes Quick Draw. This weapon can be drawn unbelievably fast. Javelin, which increases the warhead velocity, and Speed Reload, which will allow you to reload the weapon quicker. Rarely will you ever need to have to switch to your rocket launcher quickly, so the choice ultimately comes down to Javelin and Speed Reload. I've tried both of these options and I find the change that they provide to be mostly negligible, so my advice to you would be to try both and see which one best fits your playstyle. The final ability is Who's Next. A kill with the final round in the magazine will increase the weapon's reload speed. You will definitely see this come into play if you're using your Dragon's Breath to take on Tier 1 mobs, but against Tier 2 enemies and bosses, rarely does it ever come into play, so I wouldn't rely on it too much. For PvE, Dragon's Breath is devastating. It can instantly destroy Tier 1 mobs, and it does a pretty good job of weakening Tier 2 enemies. The Dragon's Breath is also pretty good at taking care of bosses, though I wouldn't take it in a raid. Against some more nimble bosses, such as the Scion Flares and the Restorative Mind, you may want to opt for something else. But against slower moving bosses, such as Valis Ta'aurc or Goliath tanks, the Dragon's Breath is surprisingly effective. The napalm effect will cover an area for about 7 seconds, constantly dealing solar damage to any enemy that wanders into it. Make sure to take this thing along with you if you ever do a nightfall with solar burn. If you're going to run the Dragon's Breath with your Titan, make sure to do so with the Ruin Wings. They will increase the frequency of heavy ammo drops, and it will allow you to get more ammo from each brick. Alternatively, you can also use the Taikonaut helmet to increase your heavy ammo drops. It won't give you as much ammo in every brick, but it will give your Dragon's Breath tracking, which will make it easier for you to target enemies. In PvP, however, the Dragon's Breath has little application. Its low velocity makes it easy to dodge, and its small blast radius makes it hard to hit enemies even if you do connect with the rocket. It is viable, however, in objective-based modes such as Control, Salvage, or Rift. You can just fire a rocket on a point of interest and use the napalm to dissuade enemies from advancing. Even with this taken into account, if you're going to run an exotic weapon in your heavy slot, then I would strongly suggest you use Yallarhorn or Truth instead. Aesthetically, the Dragon's Breath is gorgeous. It's probably, if not the most awesome looking weapon in the game. Its olive-colored paint job and fierce-looking decals give it the appearance of a bomber plane. The front barrel of the weapon will constantly emit a stream of exhaust, and even the little pipes on the side will glow red whenever you fire a rocket. My only complaint is with the weapon's iron sights, which I find to be large and intrusive. They remind me a lot of the kind of iron sights that I saw on the Fourth Horseman. Those iron sights worked well for that weapon, but that was mostly just because you didn't have to aim so much with the Fourth Horseman. For the Dragon's Breath, however, aiming is important, and often I've found the iron sights to be kind of large and in the way. Let's summarize everything we've discussed here. The completely redesigned Dragon's Breath is fun and effective to use in PvE, and its surplus perk will guarantee you always have plenty of rockets to spare. Combined with its awesome looking aesthetics, the Dragon's Breath will also make sure you look like a badass while you're burning down everything around you. Unfortunately, learning how to deploy the napalm canister takes some getting used to, and having to reload the rocket launcher after every shot gets old quick. Furthermore, its low velocity and poor blast radius makes it a lousy choice for PvP activities. And that just about does it for my review of the Dragon's Breath. What do you think? Did you think Bungie fixed it finally for year 2? Do you think it's still just a hunk of junk and it's no good? Let me know in the comment section. Also, don't forget to spank that like button if you enjoyed the review or you found it helpful in any way. Your support means a lot to me. And as always, y'all be good to each other, and I will see you in the next video.